You have made it to the magnificent Le Panthéon. The building was constructed after King Louis XV vowed that he would build a new grand basilica if he recovered from a great illness. During this time, he prayed to the patron saint of Paris, Saint Geneviève, that he would recover, and when he finally did in 1744, the new basilica was dedicated in her name. The area where the current Pantheon stands today has however been a sacred site for an even longer time. The place was a sacred site as early as 507 and later in 512, when it became the first burial place for the Saint Geneviève, who had protected Paris from the barbarians. The man responsible for the construction of the Panthéon was the Marquis de Marigny, and the foundation stone was laid in 1758. However, due to financial difficulties, the completion of the building was delayed until 1789. This was a time of revolution in France, and in 1791 the Constituent Assembly passed a decree that turned the basilica into a temple to house the remains of the nation's greatest. Since then, the building has been converted back to a basilica twice. The converting back and forth did however stop with the burial of the famous writer Victor Hugo in 1885, and has ever since mainly served as a civic temple for France's greatest. The change from a basilica to a temple also led to some changes on the outside of the Panthéon. Above the front pillars at the main entrance, you will see the beautiful pediment which depicts the fatherland crowning the hero. You will also be able to read the inscription Au grand homme la patrie reconnaissant, meaning for the great men from the grateful homeland. If you look closely on the left side of the pediment, you will see two small men sitting down. These are the famous philosophers and writers Voltaire and Rousseau. This pediment is not the original one, but was added in 1837 to reflect the building's new use. Another typical feature you can see by looking at the main entrance is its Corinthian columns. The facade itself is modelled after the Pantheon of Agrippa in Rome, and both inside the Pantheon and on the outside, the Roman and Greek neoclassical features are evident. The Pantheon's large dome, found in the middle, was inspired by several similar Renaissance structures, and it was a smart way to lead daylight into the building, which was one of the architect Jacques-Germain Soufflot's main goals when designing the Panthéon. While the outside of the Panthéon is certainly impressive, most people visit for its inside. The inside is covered with the same Corinthian columns that you can see on the front facade. The inside also holds three other main features. The first one are the many beautiful drawings you'll see on the walls, each one telling a part of the French history, everything from the childhood of Saint Geneviève to the story of Jeanne d'Arc. In the middle of the Panthéon, you will find Foucault's pendulum. This is an invention by the physicist Léon Foucault, which demonstrates the rotation of the Earth. The invention was installed in 1851, but was later removed and reinstalled in 1995. Surrounding the invention, you will find early 20th century sculptures, including scenes from the French Revolution. The last main feature you will find on the inside is the magnificent statue in the far back. This is known as the National Convention, which shows the symbol of France, Marianne, surrounded by soldiers and members of the parliament after the revolution. Just underneath Marianne, you can read the phrase, Vivre libre ou mourir, meaning live free or die. If you have the time, I also recommend that you visit the crypt. As mentioned in the beginning, the Panthéon is after all a mausoleum for France's greatest, so the crypt is well worth a visit. In total, there are more than 70 people entombed in the crypt. Among those buried down in the crypt is Voltaire, Rousseau, Victor Hugo, Émile Zola, Jean Moulin, and Marie Curie. Welcome to the park which is truly one of a kind, Antonio Gaudi's Parc Güell. Nowhere else is there a park where beautiful rough stone creations, ceramic tiles, and landscaping details create such an amazing fantasy world, while at the same time not overpowering the natural setting of the park environment. The designer of the park, Antonio Gaudí, was an Art Nouveau and modernist architect located in Barcelona. He was a master of combining color and natural shapes into something out of this world. Arguably, no other architect in history has ever had such an absolute influence over a city as Antonio Gaudí has had over Barcelona. There are great works of his modernist style all over the city, and one of his most interesting works is this beautiful park. This park, built between 1900 and 1914, was originally part of a commercially unsuccessful housing site. The idea behind the site came from Count Eusebi Güell. The Count wanted to build a type of gated community for Barcelona aristocracy, consisting of 60 houses surrounded by an extraordinary park. However, due to poor response from potential clients, only 2 of the planned 60 houses ended up being built, neither of them designed by Gaudí. One of these 2 buildings was intended to be a show house, but as no buyers came, Gaudí decided to buy it himself. He moved in with his family and his father in 1906, and lived there on and off until his death in 1926. The building is today known as La Torre Rosa, or Casa Museo Gaudí, a museum which has notable examples of furnishings designed by Gaudí and other personal memorabilia. The house is definitely a must-see for everyone interested in Gaudí and his style. Even though the gated community became an epic failure, the park remained a private garden of the Güell family until the 1920s. The family then handed over the park to the municipality, which transformed it into a public park we have today. Throughout the park, Gaudí's strong influence by natural shapes is evident. Here you can find walkways supported by twisting rock pillars that seem to be growing out of the ground like trees. You can also find several animal-inspired sculptures, the most prominent one being the dragon found at the entrance to the park. The dragon is adorned with beautiful colored tiling called trenchadis, which Gaudí often used in his creations. The focal point of the park is, however, the main terrace, surrounded by a long bench shaped as a sea serpent. The curves of the serpent bench forms a number of enclaves, creating a great social atmosphere for all the visitors. Many people rank Parc Güell as a must-see when visiting Barcelona. Not only will you enjoy the park, but an amazing view of the city from the main terrace area. In 1984, Barcelona's most magical park became listed on the UNESCO World Heritage List, a true testament to how extraordinary and fascinating this site is.
Heerlen heeft zijn glaspaleis terug. Het gebouw is nog altijd even fascinerend als bij de oplevering zo'n 68 jaar geleden. Het behoort terecht tot de 1000 meest toonaangevende gebouwen van de vorige eeuw. In 1932 krijgt de Heerlens architect-ingenieur Frits Peuts van burgemeester van Grunsven en van stoffenkoopman Peter Schonk de opdracht voor het ontwerp van modehuis Schonk. Van het hele ontwerpproces bestaan niet meer dan 11 perspectieftekeningen, maar die vertellen wel veel over de architectonische opvattingen van Peuts. Nog voordat de daadwerkelijke bouw in mei 1934 van start gaat, is het ontwerp al omstreden. En dat zal zo blijven tot lang na de opening in juli 1935. Het glaspaleis, zoals modehuis Schonk wordt genoemd, combineert elementen van de traditionele bouwkunst en het nieuwe bouwen. Peuts gebruikt beton, staal en glas voor de constructie. Hij past geometrische vormen toe en hij laat het licht van alle kanten binnenkomen. Franje is er niet bij. Het is een functioneel gebouw, strak en sober van vorm. Er zijn geen dragende buitenmuren. Zo kunnen de gevels worden opgetrokken uit vensterglas dat het gebouw zijn bijna magische uitstraling geeft. Het lijkt wel of binnen en buiten niet meer bestaan. Het einde van de mijnindustrie lijkt ook het einde voor het glaspaleis te worden. De slopers staan al klaar, maar gelukkig keert de tij. In 1997 koopt de gemeente het gebouw. In 1998 krijgt het de status van Rijksmonument en in 1999 ontvangen de Heerlense architecten Wiel Arets en Jo Koenen de opdracht om het glaspaleis in zijn oorspronkelijke glorie te herstellen. Ze pakken de renovatie met durf, maar ook met instandhouding van het werk van Frits Peuts aan. Wie nu het glaspaleis binnenloopt, waant zich niet in een gebouw uit de jaren 30 van de vorige eeuw, maar in een eigen tijdse omgeving. Vanuit de ruime hal leidt een statige trap naar de verdiepingen. Die trap heeft nog altijd dezelfde structuur en uitstraling als in 1935. Op sommige plekken voegen de twee hedendaagse architecten nieuwe elementen toe, zoals deze bar. Maar die elementen zijn altijd in overeenstemming met het karakter van het gebouw. En tot dat karakter behoort zeker de betonnen constructie, die nog helemaal intact is, inclusief de markante paddenstoelachtige kolommen met ronde en achthoekige koppen. Door het hele gebouw zijn ze nadrukkelijk aanwezig en zorgen ze voor verrassende perspectieven. De transparantie van Peuts is ook de transparantie van Arets en Koenen. Wie binnen staat heeft nauwelijks het gevoel dat hij zich in een gebouw bevindt. De enorme glaswanden zorgen voor een direct contact met de buitenwereld. Door het hele gebouw heb je als bezoeker het gevoel dat je de straat als het ware kunt aanraken. Alles is even dichtbij. Of het nou om de stad gaat, of de markt, of de historische Pancratiuskerk. Oud en nieuw zijn in het gebouw met elkaar verzoend. Oorspronkelijke, nog bruikbare detailleringen en materialen zijn opnieuw toegepast. Het hang- en sluitwerk van vroeger bijvoorbeeld, maar ook de verwarmingen. Zelfs wie goed kijkt, komt ogen tekort. Het lijnenspel van hoeken, schaduwen en doorkijkjes geeft het geheel een welhaast grafische uitstraling. Op sommige plekken moeten de architecten tijdens de renovatie stevige ingrepen doen. Leidraad bij die ingrepen is de keus voor materialen die ook door Peut zijn gebruikt. Zo is de liftkoker niet van modern aluminium, maar van staal en glas. De allerbelangrijkste ingreep is waarschijnlijk ook de minst zichtbare. Voor het wegwerken van de leidingen en installaties zijn de vloeren onder de paddenstoelkolommen verhoogd. De 2 bovenste etages ademen nog de rijke sfeer van vroeger. Hier woonde de familie Schunk als keizer in haar eigen glaspaleis. Waar de familie aan tafel zat, is nu een multifunctionele ruimte. De wenteltrap tussen de vroegere privéverdiepingen geeft nog altijd een mooi beeld van de zorg waarmee Peut ook het interieur van het gebouw benaderde. En deze 2 bovenste verdiepingen van het Glaspaleis bieden zowel binnen als buiten een panoramisch uitzicht op Heerlen en omgeving. Het Glaspaleis oogt na de renovatie nog even monumentaal, even modern en even spannend als bij de opening in 1935. Het gebouw is nu weer eigendom van de bewoners en bezoekers van Heerlen. Het is een levendige ontmoetingsruimte en een centrum voor hedendaagse kunst, muziek, literatuur, film, architectuur en culturele evenementen. Bovendien bezit het Glaspaleis nog altijd een enorme zeggingskracht. En dat is, ook nu nog, in de eerste plaats te danken aan de eigenzinnigheid en de ideeën van Frits Peuts. Het Glaspaleis geniet inmiddels een wereldwijde faam, maar het is toch vooral een uniek gebouw van en voor Heerlen.
Manchester is a city of extraordinary contrasts. Its distinctive skyline tells the story of the evolution of a distinguished urban built environment, a fusion of ancient and modern, of stone, brick, glass and steel. Spinningfields, an award-winning flagship development by renowned British property company Allied London, occupies a key location in the historic heart of Manchester, stretching from Deansgate to the banks of the Irwell. Its redevelopment is transforming a 30-acre swathe of prime city centre real estate into a premium European business destination with an impressive public realm. Pivotal to the success of the project is the Civil Justice Centre, the successful result of an international design competition. This landmark building not only anchors the whole development, but sets a bold new standard in public sector architecture.
The Civil Justice Centre does have a uniqueness about it. One of our ambitions in Manchester is to have new buildings that are not necessarily things that simply blend into the background, but buildings that make a statement, that make people think and make people have opinions on them. And the Civil Justice Centre does that.
The Civil Justice Centre is an incredibly important building. It provides an important function in completing the city centre's judiciary. The aim was to create a piece of architecture that would be an enduring contribution to the cityscape of Manchester. We also wanted an architectural vision to be created, delivered in a unique style.
In fact, the Civil Justice Centre is the largest court building to be constructed in the UK for a century. The challenge was to create a building of civic generosity and European significance that, while making a powerful visual statement, would have a low environmental impact and a genuinely long, sustainable future.
It all started with an advert. The Department for Constitutional Affairs was looking for a design team to produce a building, the brief for which was very much about low energy and natural ventilation.
One of the things that we were very conscious of when we were thinking about designing this building is that there wasn't a high-rise court building type that we were aware of. So what we wanted to do was to design a building that wasn't based on a preconceived idea of what a court building should be like. We wanted this to somehow give some sense of this is a special building. There's something going on. You wouldn't necessarily know it's a courtroom, but you would know that there is something about this building that sets it apart from the rest.
The building's form is crucial to the expression of its function. The towering scale of the development reflects the strength and significance of the judicial process, while every design detail reinforces accessibility and sense of service.
The building has been designed as a series of elemental forms. Essentially, you've got the spine wall. On the western side of that, we have the atrium, which is the public space. On the eastern side of the spine wall, we have the courts themselves that are expressed as the fingers. On the other side of the fingers, we have the veil, which represents the judicial side. You've got the public coming into the courts on one side, and you've got the judiciary and restricted access coming into the courts on the other. And in fact, the two really only ever meet in the courtrooms themselves.
An imaginative design concept is only part of the story. Transforming the vision into reality involves planning and coordinating thousands of individual processes. During the course of the build, creative engineering solutions had to be found to some of the more complex design concepts.
There was a requirement to understand the detailed nature of the build and how we were going to build the structure, both in terms of the steelwork, fabrication, fingers, how we were going to deal with that from a logistics point of view, and how we were going to challenge innovation. Initially, we had 6 to 8 months where it was all very slow activity, low within the basement construction. And then when we commenced the slip form, that's where we actually build out the cores. Very quickly, the project had a dramatic appearance on the Manchester skyline. All of a sudden, we had 3 massive chimneys up there, centre core, size of a tennis court, with the banker lifts and the public staircases and the general access.
The most striking design feature is the glazed cantilevered courtrooms that project from the building.
When we used the fingers as the expression of the courtrooms, we're trying to make them monumental forms, big glass boxes cantilevering impossibly out into space.
The construction build of the fingers was technically quite challenging. We put the original box up, we're working bottom up with the steel, top down with the concrete. Elements of bridge technology in terms of the stability of those fingers.
What we did in these fingers was that we used materials that you found inside the building. So we've used timber, we've got the metal panels that are appearing in the external reading of the building. Now, that's quite an unusual thing to do in a building. Normally, your internal materials stay inside and your external materials only on the outside. But by putting them as 2 layers, by having a glass layer protecting these internal materials, they become almost like a curtain. It's almost as though you feel you could open the curtain and start to look into the courtroom itself.
Some of the cladding and facades that we're putting on it really is challenging global technologies in terms of the construction methodologies that we've used. We didn't have a massive scaffold around the outside of the building. We had 22 mast climbers, which access platforms that go up and down the outside of the building. Best part of 3 kilometres of lattice mast section.
From the outset, the aim was to make the Civil Justice Centre as sustainable as possible in terms of energy usage and future flexibility.
Our scheme was different. The building is tall, it's narrow, and it is oriented across the prevailing wind direction. The shape of the building actually is determined by the natural ventilation. The air spreads out horizontally, and then it goes from there up to the floor above into the courtrooms, into the ceilings of the courtrooms, and out of the building on the east facade. The project, as does most of Manchester, sits on an aquifer. That water sits there at about 12.5 degrees C, which is quite cool, and we use that water to cool the building. With global warming, buildings in the future will have to use even less energy, and so this is a step on the way to future buildings. The environmental veil is the last layer. Behind it, it's pretty much 100% glazed. The perforations, the openings, we've got light shelves as part of that environmental veil. Those are all engineered to push the light where it's required, but to keep the solar gain out.
The triple glazed atrium is a remarkable feat of engineering.
What we wanted to do in the atrium was to make it feel that there was a sense of connection with the other levels. You sense that you weren't, if you like, the only people here in this building. The atrium itself rises over 9 very tall stories. We didn't want to make it one gigantic space that in its own way would have an intimidating presence. So into that space we projected a series of what we call pods, which are little meeting rooms. But even in those areas, you're able to look out and see the outside world and still feel connected with it rather than feel like you're trapped in this dark little room.
Finishing the building to a high standard was always going to be a crucial part of the construction process if the Civil Justice Centre was to successfully realise its designer's original vision and provide a state-of-the-art 21st century working environment for Her Majesty's Court Service.
Third and final stage was very much taking it into the fit-out and the phases that we've moved into more recently, which is the high-quality finishes and getting those high-quality finishes delivered in a timely manner.
Outstanding architecture lies at the heart of all Allied London developments, and the Civil Justice Centre is no exception. This monumental building, with its soaring 60-metre-high, fully glazed atrium, is a triumph, and at 11,000 square metres, features the largest suspended glass wall in Europe. The 35,000 square metre development houses 47 courts and 75 consultation rooms, in a building with a growing international reputation, having already earned a raft of awards for its design, construction, and environmental sustainability. So what will be the lasting legacy of the tallest court building in the world today?
I think the building will become an internationally well-known, iconic landmark building. It has its own character, its own personality, and I believe that will define it amongst other major buildings.
We all have different ways of measuring the success of a building, but in this building, what I would like to think is that it's a building that does have character, that does have personality, that doesn't just become just another building that could be in any other city of the world. It actually adds something to the city of Manchester.